Hi, I'm Aegis Cores, and welcome back to another episode of EU5. I'm playing the nation of Ireland in my Luck of the Irish series, where I look to push back the British or the English, and ultimately take over the British Isles. In the last video, we had a tough war against the English. I got Scotland and France as allies, following a series of wars with a lot of the Irish miners and an initial war with the Pale at the time. So I've completely gotten the British out of the Emerald Isle, and I've been doing a little bit of nation building since the previous war. I've been just strictly looking to upgrade a lot of my country, right? Rural areas to towns to cities where possible with population. Dublin is obviously the first one where you can kind of make that, but I still have a number of vassals. I've started to integrate some of them, working to integrate more. And the next few years, I'm just waiting for the next phase of the 100 Years' War to conclude. I ended up piecing out the English white piece. In the 100 Years' War, you can only take land in the French region, so there's no point in me kind of sticking it out. My land that I have in Wales is under siege. Scotland wasn't joining the war themselves either, so I really just kind of wanted to get out of that so I can continue with my nation buildings. France usually stays in this war for quite some time as they're sieging down. Only the British regions or the English regions in the French, they don't usually send their troops over, and they need to siege down London to get a ticking war score, so it makes things slow on their end. At the same time, they also need to peace out so that I can call them into the next phase of the war, so it just gives me a little bit more break to continue to fix my nation, build roads where it's possible, try to build temples in the towns, right? Just trying to increase control with as little as I have across the country right now. So it's just kind of building it back up and start to get the economy running, try to upgrade all of the province capitals to towns as a first priority. Ideally moving them all to towns in the next few centuries, and cities where possible, getting in the buildings that ultimately provide more control, more population growth to increase the amount of levies I can build, and just kind of get the economy rolling. But it's going to be some time before I can get back to war with them. I don't actually declare until 1420, so we'll just kind of skip ahead until we get to that point. And here we skip ahead to the 1420s. We are back again at war with England, and we now have France and Scotland still as allies, and they're shepherding their troops over to the mainland, right? My war goal is ultimately to continue to capture Welsh land. It's not a difficult war, right? We outnumber them from a man-to-man perspective. You win a couple battles, you lose them. It's really just making sure that I stay close to my allies, just because sometimes they split out for whatever reason, versus maintaining our number significance. But because of the ultimate amount of numbers that we have, the sheer numbers, it's not a difficult war, right? It's just getting and securing the land that we have. We have ticking war score, as you can see right there, and ultimately it's getting into the right piece deal that makes sense. I want to kind of continue to grow and have a stronger Welsh vassal, so that when I land there, I already have a vassal that has forts that protect them, so that it's not like they've completely come in with the English and wiped them before I even able to raise and ferry my vassals over. And then when I start to integrate it, I've moved my castle over, or my capital over to Dublin, just so it's a little bit more centrally located in the British Isles region, right? So they're kind of got more of the port adjacencies to a lot of the Welsh, Northumbrian, and even the Cornwall regions of England, so that when I start to integrate all of those lands, especially the Celtic region lands that have a little bit more of a mix of culture. It's not just 100% English. There's a lot more Welsh. Even though I think English is still the dominant culture. Like my vassal that I will build over there is actually English, which I don't know why they didn't automatically default to Welsh, but I think it was just a sheer numbers game. I guess they have done a better job at assimilating those cultures over the first 100 years. That must have been what they were prioritizing. So taking this land, ultimately taking a peace deal, that makes the most sense for me, along with the war reparations, which will just help to continue to build my economy as I kind of move forward. So it's like I said, easy pickings. They were not really much of a challenge, just based on the numbers that France was sending over, and ultimately get them to agree to a deal and get a peace deal to the mid 1930s, which takes us to the next phase of the campaign. I was not quick enough to ultimately get out of the next phase of the war, which was unfortunately the next phase of the 100 Years' War. France called me in almost immediately. They declared. I was hoping to kind of get my next parliament for a free declaration, but they declared almost immediately. I think I had another year, so I was trying to squeeze out another year on a parliament. So I had a little bit of a delay, and with my vassal there, they just kind of come in and immediately siege them down. They focus their attention there. So I don't even send my troops over. They outnumber me. Scotland's not called in as an ally. They're not actually allied to France. France is just guaranteeing them. So it's just really not a war I'm looking to kind of get involved with. So they send troops over, and I ultimately, just want to stay in as long as they're willing to then white peace me. You can see Brittany, one of the French vassals, has sent their troops over to just get slaughtered. Their goal is down in the south, so the good news is that they're taking land that ultimately starts to tick the score up. So with France having an advantage on the war score, England is actually more motivated to peace out. But again, it's just more about skipping ahead and getting out of this war as soon as I can, and aligning the parliament decision so that I can fabricate the claim on England and be ready to declare war when both of us and Scotland are in peacetime and willing to then separate peace. So yeah, we'll just skip ahead and we'll continue on, and we'll get to the next phase of the war where I'm in control of the peace treaty and have a better ability to continue to grow and expand. The 100 Years' War does kind of slow things down, just because France is usually pretty timely on declaring. So if you're not kind of lined that up, it's kind of a luck of the draw sometimes. But in this instance, I think they declared the month that the peace treaty stopped. So sometimes it can take a year or two. In this case, they declared immediately, and you try to take any land in that, even if you've established war score, it says it's not allowed as part of the peace treaty of the 100 Years' War. So there really is no benefit to me staying in, because I'll never get the war score that France is getting. So even cash is just not going to be worth it. So skipped ahead and eventually white peaced and helped Scotland out in some of their civil wars. We skip ahead to the next phase in the 1430s, and I continue my conquest of England, ultimately to expand my Welsh vassal, to continue to garner more land and clay in that region. France is actually not as willing to send troops up, but luckily between the numbers that Scotland and I have, we're able to get a peace deal that's acceptable to me. So you continue to add a little bit more land, Now they have the whole coast of Wales there. So it just increases the strength of my vassal a little bit more, as well as the war reparations. That just kind of gives me more of a power block. The other thing I did was I made a mistake and I had a civil war in the Waterford region, and they were English rebels, so they rebelled. I thought I sieged down all the land, and ultimately I did not. I made a mistake, and they were released as a separate country and became a vassal of England. I guess in hindsight, it wasn't like the worst mistake that could happen because, with that peace deal, I now had land to then fabricate on in the next war phase. Here we are in the mid 1440s, and it just allows you to get that ticking war score. Sometimes difficult in Wales if you're trying to siege down a fort as your land grab. So it delayed things a little bit on my conquest just because I had to re-siege land that I already had. But at the end of the day, it helps with the ticking war score so that you can continue to kind of grow because you are just waiting for England to move its troops out. But as you can see, we're starting to get to the point where between Scotland and myself, like we can kind of take England on our own. Now France, as you can see, has shepherded the troops over. We now have the sheer numbers over here in Wales, so it becomes a lot easier when France decides to send them over. You can throw a little bit more caution to the wind, just because you can see that we've now are sieging down all of Wales and Cornwall region, and should be easy enough to establish the desired peace deal that I'm ultimately going to get into this treaty. I think my mouse was wandering there as I stepped away from the computer. But yeah, it was an easy enough war. We had the sheer numbers, and you can see there now I've taken a huge chunk of the Welsh region. It's slow conquest, but you take a little bit at a time. There's no threat to antagonism just because we're so far away from everybody else. So you just kind of continue to take the clay, continue to kind of push the borders, weaken England little by little. They do get stronger in every war just because they're continuing to grow their economy. So that's why it's always important to take the war reparations, which can work itself out to upwards of 30 plus ducats a month, right? And a lot of times when I'm going through, I'm making all of my positive income from war reparations. And if you're getting 100 ducats every 3 months, then you're able to build certain and key buildings in that time frame. That really just kind of helps establish your nation building and really allows you to grow substantially. So it's just kind of continuing on with that, continuing to push the British back and grow Ireland, and with the hopes to make us one of the global powers and ultimately take over the British Isles. So now I have a stronger vassal in preparations for the next phase of the war, which will come in the ensuing decade. But have a little bit of a lengthy peace treaty, which is okay because the length of the peace treaty means that England has given me that length of war reparations as well. We pick up the next phase of the campaign, and it's in the 1460s. I skipped ahead a little bit. There was a previous war with England in the 1450s that I ended up just having to wipe peace. And France did not send any troops up, and it became a difficult battle. I lost a pretty big war, and I lost most of my levies and was not able to support Scotland. So, but the two of us were starting to get pushed back, and with France not sending troops over, it was more worthwhile to just kind of get out of the war. But in this war, they do send troops over. They start to invade their capital and take that, and be able to start getting ticking war score. And it doesn't become too difficult of a campaign, right? Like we have the troops in, they have the numbers, and it's always a factor of if France is bringing their hegemon. You can see there from the new ad tech that's coming the new technology trees that they've established, they're moving forward, and they're the strongest nation in the game, right? With almost all of the hegemons, except for I think like culture that Austria has. So when they're sending those numbers and the troops, and they have the power that France does, they're really just not going to be a match for England. As you can see, they've started to invade. They have a battle on multiple fronts now, with Scotland invading from the north, myself and France invading from Wales, and then France themselves are invading the south of England on their own, with the invasion of the capital, and in the Kent region over there in England. So it it was a little bit of a long war just to kind of siege down some of these capitals. My intention here was to snipe away another vassal in the Cornwall area, knowing that the intention to try to get all of the Celtic land out from under England in this war, and also establish a second vassal that I can then release after I captured for my vassal all of the Welsh land. So another successful war here, getting some more war reparations, and I was able to take their capital, and it was pretty easy pickings from there, and got the piece that I wanted, got the 100% max war score and war reps to really just kind of continue to propel my economy and my country and start to grow and become more of a major player in the economy. And this is, as you start to see, I'm starting to siege down, and there's not really a threat of England coming. They're kind of not even coming after our stacks, just knowing that they just don't have the numbers. I'm trying to ultimately connect the two vassals where possible, or split the difference of, do I take more land or take war reparations? I like to take the more war reparations, just so that I'm hurting England from rebuilding quicker, right? If they're having to give a portion of their monthly economy to me, it hurts their efforts to rebuild and continue to build buildings in their lands. But it was becoming easy. And then the last battle for this video, we skip ahead to the 1470s, after the peace deal comes back, and now I'm able to declare war on England again. We've now reached the age of discovery, right, where everyone's getting a little bit better tech, and some of the tech that you get in that is diplomatic range. So England now has the ability to, create allies. With us being so far away, having allies beyond Scotland and France is difficult for our nations, but now they have the ability to secure allies a little bit further away. So they've secured allies in Burgundy and Aragon, which obviously concentrates France's forces on the mainland, right? And that makes sense because now they have actual threats. It's not just the small vassals that England has in the western France region, right? They've now taken over those lands. They still have not completely pushed the English out, so that's why the 100-Year War is still going on. It's not like the 150-year war. But we have a difficult war here, right? This war actually takes well over 5 years. And anytime you go over 5 years, your allies, lose war wariness, right? It makes sense. You're in a war. You start to get tired, especially if you're not the one that declared the war. So eventually I'm able to secure peace with both Burgundy and Aragon through the help of France, which was great because ultimately they offer, with land sieged in both, they offer war reparations. So I'm getting a ton of cash at the end of this war, as I'm getting war reparations from both Aragon and Burgundy. In hindsight, I might have been able to push those peace deals a little bit further, just so that the war reps stretches further, because you basically get the war reparations for the length of the peace deal. But if you're only taking 10 war score peace deal that the war reps are, then it's only going to be a little bit over the 5-year minimum that a white peace would be. But ultimately I wanted to get them out so that France could come and support me before they reach that 10-year mark. As you can see, I'm already at the 3 years into the war now. So them and Scotland are both now at risk of white piecing out. Scotland's now going through, or I'm going. There's a civil war that's now happening. So there's a lot going on into this war, where I'm kind of helping Scotland in their civil war. So they're getting to the point where they're going to look to get out of this war as they're fighting their own internal turmoils and divided attention. But luckily, we still kind of outnumber the British. The British have actually sent some troops over to the mainland France, which would be a huge mistake on their end, right? Like they now have lost their allies in the war, and they have like a 13 stack. Now France is going to kind of get out of this war now, but for some reason England has the bulk of their troops still trapped in mainland France. So I was about ready to wipe peace out, with knowing that they had outnumbered me with what ultimately Scotland and France no longer being in the war. But because they had the majority of their troops still trapped in mainland France, I was able to kind of push the envelope and continue this war much further than I would have ultimately liked originally. But I was able to secure the peace deal I was, right? I had to continuously raise my levies. So I'm ruining the future growth of my country as I continuously raise the levies of all the young men being born in my country over those 5 years, right? But you can see at the bottom there's 11,000 troops of English that are still stuck in mainland France. I think they must have lost most of their boats, so they're just not able to ferry them back over. So it's just knowing that it's just a siege race at this point, right? I don't have the war score, as my war goes that castle. So it's ultimately trying to siege that castle down. I eventually get it. I was able to now take the Cornwall regions, or connect Cornwall to my other vassal. So at the very least, I have now the support that I need, and now my vassals are able to raise some substantial troops as well. So whatever England can raise above and beyond what's stuck in mainland France is really no match for what I'm able to do. So I'm able to kind of connect my lands, which was the ultimate goal, right? Is to not have a divided force. And now I'm starting to create a buffer of land between myself and England, and I've now connected the bridge to Scotland. And ultimately Scotland's now going to break their alliance with me, because it's just not now I'm bordering on their territory and it's a little bit more threatening. But we'll take the video from here. It's spanned the course of about 80 years, and as you can see, I've captured all of Ireland, and now all of Western England, with the Welsh and Cornwall regions of England under myself or under my vassal domains. We'll take it from here, and thanks for watching. And if you like it, please subscribe and tune in for the next video, where I'll start to capture more of mainland England, and also start to take on Scotland, trying to break that block of alliance between themselves and France. Thank you.